The American Artificial Stone, forging a new frontier in the industry of building, architecture, and ornamentation in the 19th century. Today we are reading through several articles which have been collected in a unique publication, the title being a bit lengthy here, but it is called the New York Frear Stone Company, manufacture all kinds of building and monumental stone of any design known to architectural experience, representing in color of any of the natural stone of this country, and surpassing them all in durability, strength, and beauty. Each article has its own flavor. Some details may be repeated, yet it is such an intriguing perspective into this industry and how this specific stone, this American artificial stone, was labeled as one of the secrets of nature herself. This being a common theme to all who propose the discovery or rediscovery of this ancient art. So thank you for listening in, and hope this provides some more data to ponder in regards to this ever mysterious industry of manufacturing stone. The link will be below, and encourage you to check out this book yourself, as there are even testimonials at the end of this publication worth investigating. Let's begin. The want of a cheap and yet elegant and durable building material has been long felt and appreciated by men of all classes, and it was to meet this want that the inventor and patentee George A. Frear of Chicago patented February 4th, 1868, the combinations of certain chemicals with sand or gravel, which, when pressed, form a solid stone, equally as hard as limestone and more durable, as we shall show. The materials used are sand and gravel, which can be found in unlimited quantities all over the country. These are fastened together firmly by chemicals, which form a solid, insoluble stone, and is pressed in molds of any desired pattern or form, such as bricks of various sizes, ashlars, keystones, corner blocks, water tables, door and window caps, sills, cornices, etc. We have subjugated these stones to the severest tests of frost and heat to determine their value as a building stone in resisting atmospheric influences. Various artificial and chemical tests have also been made, and exposure to the weather only hardens them. For cheapness and durability, for well curbs and walling underground, for culverts or bridge abutments standing underground or in the water, or cellar walls, there is no stone or brickwork that equals the Frear stone in value. We can manufacture the stone of a color to represent perfectly the beautiful Nova Scotia stone used so much in the eastern cities, or the brownstone of New York and Philadelphia. The minerals used render the color permanent and also solidifies the mixture. A person purchasing the right to manufacture the stone will receive full instructions. The same material may be used as a mastic of any desired color for covering the walls of old brick buildings, and is vastly superior, and costs less than half the ordinary oil mastic, and its color will never fade, and is also a durable, fireproof paint. To induce capitalists to invest their money in this valuable patent, we have also to satisfy them of the profit of the manufacture, which we can do to the satisfaction of anyone. Building stone of any design can be afforded in cost much below any native stone, and at about the same cost of brick if put in bricks, and is vastly more durable than either. The first building ever erected of the Frear stone is the elegant dwelling of H.B. Horton on Calumet Avenue, Chicago, erected in the summer of 1868 and shown herein by plate. In further explanation of this valuable invention, we refer with pleasure to the following notice from the Chicago Chronicle. One of the chief needs of the country is a building material, durable, neat, and cheap. While there are numerous quarries in our own and other states, from which is obtained excellent stone for building purposes, and beds of clay suitable for making good brick, these are not generally distributed throughout the country, and were they, the first is too expensive, and the latter are generally of poor quality. Of course, as our growth is rapid, we often build in a hurry, and therefore sacrifice, to some extent, strength and permanence, to the necessity for immediate shelter. But when no such necessity compels it, buildings are too generally of wood or other inferior material, and this not because we are naturally a shabby people, having no appreciation of what is proper and sensible in the erection of our homes and places of business, but because, really, except at great cost, we cannot obtain better material. This being the case, we judge that we shall be conferring upon our readers a great benefit, as well as paying deserved attention to a most important branch of manufacture, by giving a portion of our space this week to Frear's Artificial Stone, now being extensively made in our city by the Frear Stone Manufacturing Company. In a previous issue, we made reference to the same subject, and our comments thereupon have elicited considerable inquiry. For the purpose of satisfying our own curiosity and enabling ourselves to satisfy that of others, we have made fuller and more thorough investigations. The attempt to supply the market with building stone by artificial processes is one of great antiquity. In parts of Europe and Africa, these processes are known to have been used for more than 1,000 years. The Barbary Moors have for many centuries possessed the art of making a most durable concrete, and when they overran Spain 700 years ago, introduced it to that country. There are now standing at Gibraltar a tower and several walls of buildings, constructed wholly of this material, and believed to have been erected by the Moors during some former invasion, when they succeeded in gaining a foothold, but were unable permanently to maintain it. The antiquity of these relics cannot be less than 1,000 years, and still they endure, apparently unimpaired by the disintegrating touch of time, and the storms which, for 10 centuries have beaten upon them. It has been suggested, and not without reason, that the huge blocks which form the pyramids, and puzzle the curious of modern times with the query, "Whence came we?" were not transported across the great desert, so many weary miles from distant quarries, but were made on the spot by some cunning process, the secret of which has perished with the wondrous race that builded them. In modern times, numerous experiments have been tried for the making of artificial stones. Of these, the most successful of which we have any knowledge is the process patented a few years since by Mr. Frear, who sold the right to his invention for this state to the Frear Stone Company, whose manufactory is located upon the lakeshore foot of 37th Street. It is sufficient to say of the process that it is as near an imitation of the natural as is practicable. Precisely how, in her great laboratory and workshop, in the strata which makes the Earth's crust, through cycles of ages, nature has been making her mysterious transformations, the geologist with his hammer and chemicals has in vain sought to discover, although he has learned much in a general way. We know of the various sandstones, which form so large a portion of the known rock deposits, that they are in varying proportions, according to their several species, composed of clay, lime, silex, and iron, that originally they were soft, plastic deposits upon the then surface, deepening with the accumulation of material, and, as in the progress of ages, they became overlaid with a great mass of superincumbent matter. The immense pressure thus produced hardened them into stone. Frear's artificial stone is formed of common sand, moistened with a chemical solution which supplies the necessary cement. The compound is placed in molds and subjected to a pressure of 30 tons to the square foot. The press was invented for this special purpose by Mr. Frear, and is an exceedingly ingenious contrivance, being a complicated systems of levers, which multiply a given weight to a most bewildering extent. Mr. Frear seems, by his invention, to have successfully emulated nature's efforts to produce pressure, and accomplished his purpose equally well. and in considerable less time than it took nature to do her work. That the inventor of this manufacture has well learned the lesson of the rocks, and gleaned from the pages which have been upheaved in Earth's great commotions the secret of nature's handiwork, seems evident by a comparison of the artificial with the natural stone. In company with several other gentlemen, we carefully examined through a powerful microscope 2 specimens, and were unable to discover the slightest difference in their apparent composition and structure. We were not a little surprised at being informed that one of them was a piece of Portland brown stone, and the other of Frear's Artificial. In one respect, Mr. Frear's product is the superior of nature's, and that is, its less liability to disintegrate upon exposure to the atmosphere. It must be remembered that the natural stone is made deep down in the nether regions of the earth, away from atmospheric influences, and that when it is removed, thence to the upper air, in obedience to the law of its structure, the tendency is gradually to become friable and wear away, whereas Frear's artificial stone is made in the air, and with special reference to atmospheric influence, and, therefore, the tendency is to harden and strengthen with exposure. This stone has been made the subject of numerous very careful experiments to determine its qualities. Its capacity for resisting pressure, as compared with that of other material, has been thoroughly tested, as will be seen by referring to the certificate of the Ordnance Officer at the Naval Yard, Washington. A single 1 1/4 inch cube sustained 6,000 pounds without cracking. A single surface foot of the Frear stone will sustain 432 tons. This seems almost incredible, nevertheless, it is a fact. Another test was applied to determine the relative endurance of the stones when subjected to lateral pressure, which was conducted in the following manner. A piece of each variety, 3 feet long by 6 inches wide and 4 inches in thickness, was suspended by 3-inch bearings on either end. The pressure was applied to the center, with this result in the several instances. Frear's Artificial sustained a weight of 1,106 pounds, the Cleveland Sandstone of 621 pounds, Canaan Marble 640 pounds, Portland Stone 759.5 pounds, Athens Marble 971 pounds. There is one consideration in connection with the artificial stone which is of importance in comparing the degree of resistance which it affords to the pressure with the same quality in other stones. In building with ordinary stones, it is customary, in order to secure the utmost possible strength, to lay them with their lines of stratification perpendicular to the horizon. The artificial has no lines of stratification, but is molded solid, and when removed from the molds, dries from the inside outward, so escaping the liability to break from flaws when used for building purposes. The pillars of the Pantheon at Paris support a weight of 60,000 pounds to each superficial foot. The piers which uphold the Great Dome of St. Paul's in London are subjected to a pressure of 33,000 pounds on each square foot, and those beneath the arched roof of the world-renowned St. Peter's at Rome bear up, per superficial foot, 33,000 pounds. As shown by the certificates herein and above referred to, Frear's Artificial will sustain a weight exceeding 860,000 pounds upon each foot of surface, so that it might be safely employed in heavier architecture than that of those massive and stately piles. Experience shows that the same natural stone disintegrates more rapidly from atmospheric influences in some places than in others. For example, a certain magnesian limestone designed to be employed in the construction of the British Houses of Parliament was thought to be extremely well adapted to that purpose, from the fact that the same material used at Southwell Minster had been exposed for 800 years and was, so far, unimpaired, as to still show every mark made by the workman's tools. Yet the same stone in London buildings was found to be seriously injured. This is accounted for as the effect of the sulfuric acid in the dense smoke of the city, which is a very powerful disintegrant. To decide whether the artificial stone was liable to decay from a like cause, it was determined to test it. Accordingly, specimens were put to soak in sulfuric acid, not the ordinary acid of commerce, but the manufacturer's concentrated article, which is very much stronger, and no perceptible change was wrought. The stone came out from its bath as firm and solid as when it took the plunge. Athens marble, accounted the best building stone in the West, when subjected to the same test, was entirely dissolved. It would seem as if this trial was decisive of the question whether artificial stone may be greatly injured by city smoke. The sulfuric acid bath, as a disintegrant, may be deemed more than an equivalent for all the noxious acid contained in an unbroken column of smoke rising from all chimneys of Chicago and reaching the zenith. Another specimen of the stone was boiled for 55 minutes in a solution of 20 ounces of concentrated potash to 3 quarts of water, and was entirely unaffected by the process, and the same result followed from testing it with various acids, which were found sufficient to dissolve Athens marble. During the severe weather of the past 4 winters, King Frost has had full opportunity to try his nipping fingers at the Frear stone, but has failed to produce the slightest injurious effect, and in fact, the stone seems to have hardened and solidified under the exposure. There are some peculiarities of this building material, other than those already noted, which especially adapt it for general use. Among these is its cheapness. It can be made at a cost much less than that of the natural stone from the quarry. Moreover, the most beautiful architecture designs may be executed in it, with a finish and perfection which the most skillful workman with the chisel cannot equal. Then, too, it may be furnished in different colors to suit the taste of the purchasers. This being stated, it is superfluous to add that the artificial stone may be used for all the purposes to which native stone is now applied. The difference in the cost between the Frear and the natural is so great as to ensure a ready sale and large profits to the manufacturer. We are glad to learn that the company are doing a thriving business and rapidly introducing the product of their works into general use. We regard their enterprise as one of the most beneficial ever undertaken in the West, not only because it is an important addition to our manufacturing industry, but because it promises to give to our buildings a cheap material for conversion into elegant, substantial, and permanent structures. From the Chicago Republican, the great modern problem, which is offered for a solution, the grandest prize to the inventive genius of the country, has been the production of a new building material, to be composed of elements widely distributed and easily obtainable, the manufacture to be simple and cheap, the resulting product to be in the highest degree durable, capable of being easily shaped into desired architectural forms, and to possess in color and texture a beauty at least equal to that of the common materials used in the construction of houses. With the solution of this problem would begin the golden age of architecture, and the ownership of houses by men becomes the rule instead of the exception. The claimant to the honor of this invention has lately appeared in one of our own citizens, Mr. George A. Frear, and in stating our belief that Mr. Frear has succeeded in filling all of the required conditions, and that the long-wished-for material has been discovered, we do so, influenced as little as possible by the opinions of professional architects, to whom we shall, however, give the credit of having been among the first to recognize its merits, and what is unusual in great discoveries, for having given, as will be seen from their certificates below, unqualified approbation to what their art has been unable to, or indifferent to create. The base of the composition is sand and gravel, which are distributed so extensively all over the country. These are firmly bound together by chemicals, the most expensive of which are used in quantities and proportions that do not largely increase the cost of the mixture over that of sand and gravel. The latter, with hydraulic cement, are first mixed together and are then moistened with the chemicals. The dampened mixture is then placed in a mold. A mixture of finer sand to form the ornamental face of the stone is placed on top, and the whole is subjected to an immense pressure, from 15 to 25 tons, in a machine which is also the invention of Mr. Frear. On being taken from the mold, the stone is allowed to dry for 2 or 3 days, and is then again dampened and exposed to the atmosphere, becomes rapidly hard, and is soon fit for use. The result is a stone much harder and capable of resisting a much greater pressure than the Portland brown stone, Connecticut limestone, Athens marble, or the best pressed brick. That such is the undeniable fact. The severest tests have shown the excellence of a material for building, as is well known, must depend much upon its ability to resist the disintegrating power of moisture and heat, and the expansive action of frost. Yet we are shown specimens of this artificial stone that have been exposed to frosts for months during the extreme weather of last winter, and which were again subjected to the intense heat, but which are harder and firmer than before the experiments were commenced. The artificial stone seems absolutely impervious to the action of the elements. Its hardness and uniformity of structure were shown when it became necessary to cut the corners of several heavy brackets. Stones whose material was almost pure silica offered no greater resistance to the cold chisel than the solidified sand and gravel in which they were embedded. At the factory of the Artificial Stone Company, we are shown not simply specimens, but cords of stone, which, in absolutely permanent color and in texture, it would be difficult to distinguish from the beautiful brown stone so much used for fronts in New York, others perfectly resembling Nova Scotia stone, and even common limestone, and these not in the rough state, but in the form of ashlars, keystones, corner blocks, water tables, door and window caps and sills, corners, etc. Not plain only, but in elaborate designs and delicate choral work. It is in the question of expense, however, that one is most liable to become enthusiastic over this new material. If we mistake not, the time is at hand when architectural beauty shall no longer be monopolized by wealth, a suggestion which discloses an immense field of thought relative to the cultivation and extension among the people of correct principles of taste in building, when the means of gratifying it shall have thus been brought within their reach. Cornices, brackets, and head blocks that cost in brown stone from $30 to $40 will be furnished for 1/2 that sum. A single stone carved in coral work costs from $8 to $10. In artificial stone, 1/3 that sum. Brown stone ashlars, worth $1.30 a square foot, in the new material cost 60 cents a foot. And the same proportion exists to whatever architectural use the material is put. From The American Builder. The Frear Stone. This new building material seems growing in favor. The opinion every day gaining ground in building circles is that we have at length found a perfect substitute for natural stone, unsurpassed in beauty, cheapness, and durability. There is no doubt as to its beauty, for in this particular it is adapted to the highest architectural effects, and this can be said of only a small portion of the natural stone used for building purposes in this country. There is no noticeable difference in this respect between the Connecticut brownstone and the Frear stone. In fact, the keenest-eyed critic will fail to detect the counterfeit. The manufacturing works are very extensive, but the price is so reasonable that they are crowded to their utmost capacity, all of which would seem to indicate the cheapness of the material. From the extent of the orders given, a very large amount of the material will be used in our best blocks and houses the coming season. The great question the one in which the public is chiefly interested, is the question of durability. Will it stand? Will it resist sun and moisture and cold like nature's own stone, which has stood through the centuries? If so, then we latest-born children of time have stumbled on a secret indeed. We can still boast of that high state of civilization which economizes human labor and yet adorns our structures with more beautiful things than were known in past ages. As we said on a former occasion, all this seems too good to be true, and yet we hope it is true, and have no reason for doubt indeed, save in that innate tendency to incredulity which more or less characterizes us all when some great invention modestly asserts its claims. And this the Frear stone has done. It has come before the people without blare of trumpets, and the fact that it has come on slowly, fighting and conquering popular prejudice every step, and, like the invention of the art of telegraphy, growing constantly in favor, all this gives confidence of its ultimate success. The severe chemical and mechanical tests, and these high scientific and professional endorsements stamp the Frear stone as one of the great inventions of the age, and as one particularly to be hailed by every man of moderate means whose taste appreciates architectural beauty. From the Albany Sunday Press, Artificial Stone. There is no denying the fact, this age we live in is certainly one of wonders. Every day brings forth something new or remarkable. The last great feature which has attracted our attention and elicited our curiosity is the artificial stone recently invented by George A. Frear of Chicago, and which has so rapidly grown into favor at Chicago, Toledo, New Orleans, Buffalo, and other leading cities of the Union. By invitation, we had the pleasure of inspecting this last great production of the 19th century yesterday, and receiving full explanation of its merits and usefulness from a gentleman thoroughly posted in the matter. The component parts of this artificial stone are sand, water lime, and certain chemicals, the latter being used for the double purpose of coloring the mass at will, and of compacting it beyond the power of ordinary tests to effect it. The compound is placed in molds and subjected to a pressure of 30 tons to the square foot, by means of a press invented by Mr. Frear. The result is a solid, insoluble stone, cast in any shape for which a mold or pattern can be made. In fact, any device that the most florid architecture can demand is easily obtained. We saw some of the blocks and caps prepared from this material, and must confess that in quality and appearance they have every resemblance to the genuine Nova Scotia white or Connecticut brown stones. This stone has undergone the severest possible tests, and in all cases satisfactorily resisted, while massy natural stones have succumbed to the same tests. As we have already stated, it can be molded to any shape for which a pattern can be made. This being a fact, we don't know why it should not come into general use in this city. Its cost is so remarkably cheap that everybody will use it in preference to brick, stone, or iron in instances where the above articles are used, so long as it proves equally, if not more, durable. Some of the finest residences, churches, and public buildings of Chicago are constructed from the Frear Artificial Stone, and, so far as appearance is concerned, look by far handsomer than those built of the real article, as the photographs of said buildings fully demonstrate. All that is necessary to convince any practical mind of the utility of this kind of building material, be it for houses, fences, pavements, monuments, or anything else, is a simple inspection of the article. Its strength is wonderful. A cube of a little over an inch was found to bear up over 6,000 pounds. Its durability is established by the tests it has already undergone. Therefore, anyone contemplating building should just cast their eyes over any building where stone is used in this city, witness the crumbling process it is exhibiting, and then, if they can, fail to declare in favor of the artificial article, in preference to the genuine. A man can now as readily build a brown stone front as a brick, and for no more, if not for less money. We say it is an article that cannot fail to come into general use, and we are glad to know that sagacious men have been so promptly found in this city who fully appreciate its advantages, and have brought the right to manufacture for this and 3 adjoining counties. These gentlemen are Nelson and Isaac Bailey, merchants, John McCabe, builder, and Frederick W. Brown, architect. They propose to organize a company at once, to be known as the Albany Frear Stone Company, and which will be composed of some of our finest citizens, with a capital of $100,000. They will erect in this city an extensive manufactory, and commence the production as soon as possible of artificial stone for practical purposes. Notwithstanding they have only had the right for a few days, already contracts for 4 buildings have been received to be built of this artificial stone. In Chicago and New Orleans, companies are organized with a capital of $500,000, and the stockholders are among the first citizens of both places. The gentlemen who have purchased the right here are all well-known enterprising businessmen who enjoy the confidence of our people and cannot fail to build upon a corporation that will add to the future welfare, wealth, and architectural beauty of our city. From the Arts, Lost Art Restored. As a useful invention of the 19th century, Mr. George A. Frear of this city, the discoverer of artificial stone, will hand down to posterity a name that will rank with the highest order of talent. It is not the purpose of the arts to puff into renown the many patented or improved machines of the day, but when a subject of such a vital importance to mankind presents itself, it is meet for us to give such matter its just due. Building materials enter largely into the finances of a people and country. The rapidity with which cities and towns are reared, having all the comforts and conveniences of modern device, this subject is a natural question for capitalists, house and freeholders, particularly so when economy is a prime consideration. The subject of artificial stone has engaged the attention of scientists for a number of years with but indifferent results, and none have been brought to so successful an application as the Frear Stone Manufacturing Company of this city. Extensive works have been erected throughout the United States and territories. Hundreds of magnificent edifices are now and have been erected, which is proof enough that architects and builders consider this material among the best thus far brought to perfection. Public edifices are constructed at Lincoln, Nebraska, under a contract with the state authorities. The details of manufacture of this artificial stone are briefly summed up as follows. The base of the artificial stone is the ordinary silica, sand or gravel, indigenous to every country. 4 parts of calcium are thoroughly incorporated and moistened with a caustic solution of shellac. Any of the prime alkaline salts may be employed in preparing this solution. To 1 gallon of boiling water may be added 1/4 pound of alkaline, lastly adding the shellac, say 1/2 pound, until the same is thoroughly dissolved. The pulp mass being saturated with this solution, it is formed into every conceivable form: ashlars, keystones, corner blocks, water tables, door and window caps, sills, cornices, brackets, head blocks, monuments, mantelpieces, etc. At a public trial under the supervision of the U.S. Ordnance Department at Washington, D.C., the commander certifies that the specimen cube of Frear's artificial stone withstood a pressure of 6,000 pounds to an inch and 1/4 cube, the original document being now on exhibition at their office. The chemical effect is such that as soon as the several elements herein described, and which are compressed by a powerful lever machine, also an ingenious invention of Mr. Frear's, the hydrated lime, or calcium, combines readily with the silica, sand, or gravel, crystallizing into a more solid body as the moisture evaporates, which requires a number of days. The shellac acts as an agglomerate, and renders the stone impervious to atmospheric elements and almost entirely fireproof. All the varieties of color may be given to the molten masses. As an industrial pursuit, this manufacture will accomplish a great desideratum in building, that it should at once supersede wooden structures is a sine qua non, and this just means an essential element, so it would be essential, so superseding wooden structures is essential. Its cheapness recommends it, while the most elegant architectural designs may be carried out at 1/3 the cost of hewn stone. We present herewith 2 illustrations, which are constructed of Frear stone. They are living evidences of Mr. Frear's invention. From the Chicago Tribune's annual review for 1869, Frear's Artificial Stone. In giving this our annual review of the commerce of this great city, we cannot pass over a due notice of the wonderful invention of the Frear Artificial Stone, which is now being manufactured and used extensively in this city and in many of the cities and towns throughout the country. And it is with especial pride that we write of this, because it is the invention of one of our own citizens. It is purely a Chicago institution, but merit is not claimed for the stone upon these grounds, but solely upon its cheapness, beauty, durability, and adaptability to all purposes for which cut stone or brick is used. During many years, repeated efforts have been made by men of scientific attainments and practical ability to produce an artificial stone, which would commend itself to architects and builders as suitable for building purposes in place of quarried stone or brick. But every such attempt has proved abortive, until Mr. George A. Frear of this city, some 3 or 4 years ago, discovered the philosopher's stone, and the result is a beautiful brown stone, as beautiful as the most highly wrought specimen taken from the justly celebrated Portland quarries, and coming from the hands of the most skillful workmen. We have watched with great interest the introduction of this stone, and have visited the extensive manufactory of the Frear Stone Company of this city, located at the foot of the Wapanesh Avenue, on the lakeshore, and are free to confess that we have never been more intensely interested in witnessing the production of a manufactured article. The process is simple, and is precisely that adapted by nature in her formation of rock. The only apparent difference being that while the slow process of nature occupies ages to form the stone, this invention assumes nature's prerogative and produces from the sand a stone of any size or design almost instantly. And so closely is nature's production counterfeited in this stone that it is extremely difficult to detect the difference. The Frear stone has now been in use so long and has resisted the action of the weather so perfectly that we can speak with confidence of its merits, believing it superior to many kinds of building stone used in various parts of the country, and equal in value to any. While in plain cut stonework, it is furnished for 1/2 the cost of native stone, and in highly wrought carved work, such as window caps, pilasters, modillions, etc., it can be afforded for 1/3 the cost of native stone, and at the same time pay the manufacturers an enormous profit. Very many buildings have been erected of the Frear stone in this city, of various sizes, from 2-story dwellings to 5-story business houses, asylums, etc. We give a cut on page 54 of the elegant 5-story building of the Mutual Life Insurance Company, constructed entirely of this stone, at number 81 South Wells Street, in this city. This is one of the finest structures in the city, and is a credit to that old and well-established company, so ably managed by its worthy president, Merrill Ladd. Also on page 55, we give an illustration of the elegant dwelling of H.B. Horton, number 93 Calumet Avenue, this city. This is fully equal in all respects to the finest brownstone palace on 5th Avenue, New York City. The Frear Stone Company of this city are doing a very extensive and prosperous business, as we are informed, and of which we see evidences in the large amount of stone being used, which is constantly increasing. We hail this invention as one of great public benefit, and expect to see it generally adopted throughout the country. We understand the right is also secured by letters patent in England and France. From the Lincoln, Nebraska Statesman, Growth and Prosperity of Lincoln. It is with feelings of pride that we advert to the rapid growth and marked prosperity of our city, the young capital of the giant state of the prairies. The history of the West, though full of interest to the men of enterprise, as affording in the rapid growth of its towns and cities examples unparalleled in history, has not hitherto given the world such an example of energy and enterprise as does Lincoln, the capital of Nebraska. Only about 2 years since this was one vast prairie. The progress of civilization, in its onward western march, had driven the original proprietors further toward the setting sun, and thus nature was left unmolested to yield up her bounties to the energetic efforts of progressive Americanism. And within these 2 years, from this houseless prairie, has grown a city of nearly 3,000 inhabitants, with state capitol buildings, which would be an honor to any place, and private dwellings and business houses of elegant design and architectural finish, which argues more, present and prospective, for the prosperity of a place than any other one thing. For, as the traveler passes through a country seeking a location for a home and to invest his capital in business enterprises, he is always governed in his judgment by the character of the buildings, architectural skill displayed, and permanency of the structures. And the men of energy and enterprise possessing pecuniary ability are of the greatest benefit and aid of the growth of a town or city. For, where capital locates, laborers will rapidly congregate. Such men will surely pass by a town that is slovenly and cheaply built, to seek the association of men possessing broader and more enlarged views, and who are willing themselves to aid in giving characters to the locality by the erection of first-class buildings. Thus, every first-class building which is erected adds to the value of every part of ground within the limits of the municipality. And among the many enterprises which are going forward in this city, bespeaking the energy and enterprise of our citizens, we deem the establishment of the manufacture of the Frear Artificial Stone as one of the greatest importance and value to the future growth of this place. The Frear Stoneworks were started here about 1 year since, and the success of the enterprise is manifest by the elegant dwelling erected for His Excellency, Governor Butler, of which the entire front and side is built of ashlars, and the entire trimmings of the building, such as beautifully wrought window and door caps and sills, water table, etc. Also, the entire cut stone trimmings as above. In the brick dwellings of the Honorable Secretary of State Kennard and Honorable Auditor of State Gillespie, these dwellings were all erected last autumn, and are of a character that would do credit to any city. The Frear stone is found to stand the action of the weather perfectly, and to answer all of the purposes for which the best building stone is used, while at the same time it can be manufactured at so much less cost than cut stone can be furnished, as to bring it within the means of all, and thus give an architectural adornment to our city. Even the elegant brownstone fronts on Fifth Avenue, New York, do not excel in beauty and durability the Frear stone, which it so closely resembles. We shall take occasion to inform our numerous readers from time to time of the establishment of new and valuable enterprises in our midst. From the interior, Frear Artificial Stone. In looking around our city among the many enterprises which are being pushed forward with that energy and skill so characteristic of our citizens, we find none that commends itself more readily to the capitalists, the practical builders, the property owners, and men of science than the manufacture of the Frear Artificial Stone. This is an invention of one of our own citizens, and has been in practical operation for 3 years past, and very many buildings have been constructed in whole or in part of this stone, which is found to stand the test of our severe weather perfectly. Among the buildings so constructed are the elegant dwelling of H.B. Horton, number 93 Calumet Avenue, the beautiful dwelling, sidewalk, and dooryard fence, all of Frear stone, on Indiana Avenue near 12th Street, belonging to possibly Colonel Farrer of the Chicago Evening Journal. 2 elegant dwellings belonging to Benjamin Lombard on Kankakee Avenue and 20th Street. Blocks of dwellings on Michigan and Wabash avenues trimmed of the stone. The Market, Corner Adams, and State Streets. The elegant 5-story building on Wells Street, near Randolph, belonging to the Mutual Life Insurance Company, one of the finest buildings in the city, and an honor to that old and sterling company. The elegant residence with dooryard fence of Honorable C.N. Holden, on West Monroe Street, this city. The immense new asylum building, 5 stories, erected the past season in the North Division. 2 dwellings for Professor Sawyer near the Chicago University, and numerous of other buildings, all of which proves that the capitalists, practical men, and men of science are thoroughly satisfied of its very great value. And for beauty, it is not surpassed by the highest wrought specimens of the justly celebrated Portland brown stone, coming from the chisel of the most skillful artist. We hail this as one of the most valuable inventions of the age. The company manufacturing in this city, and who we learn have purchased the right for the state, are composed of some of our wealthiest and most substantial citizens, and the manufacture is prosecuted on a large scale. We learn that several of the southern states are sold, and portions of several of the northern states, and that the New Orleans, St. Paul in Iowa, Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and many other places, extensive works are already established, and many public buildings have been, and are now, in progress of erection of the Frear stone, such as the extension of the State House at Jackson, Mississippi, the state public buildings, Governor and Secretary of State's dwellings at Lincoln, Nebraska. Extensive works are to be started at once in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We were shown elegant window caps of various designs, which the company sell from $12 to $20 each, which cannot be had in cut stone from the quarries for less than from $40 to $80 each. And we are assured by the superintendent of the works that very large profits are made even at these low prices. It seems that the invention has really robbed nature of one of her most valuable secrets, for it is impossible to detect the difference in the formation of this stone from the Portland brownstone, and it can be manufactured with equal facility in any locality where sand, or sand and gravel, can be obtained. This is surely an age of progress, and it is evident that the native rocks are to be permitted to quietly repose in their beds, and sleep the sleep of ages, and the sand hills of our country, hitherto deemed asleep, are to be converted into elegant building stone, and thus by the cheapness of production render it possible for the man of limited means to decorate his home, and thus by a higher order of architects to embellish our cities and towns and elevate the taste of the people. From The Standard: a cheap and valuable building material for churches, parsonages, etc., the Frear Artificial Stone. The wisest sage that ever lived once wrote, "There is nothing new under the sun," but had he lived in this 19th century, we fancy he would somewhat modify his declarations. He may have referred to material things, or possibly to abstract principles and immutable laws. Be it as it may, the age in which he lived was surely not characterized by the rapid progress in the arts and sciences, which is the wonder and admiration of all thinking minds of this present age. We are led to these few reflections from having, while in our own peregrination about this city, observed the elegant brownstone fronts and cut stone trimmings of brown stone, which are being so extensively used by our builders and property owners, and our very great surprise on learning that the stone so elegantly designed and carved, as are supposed, was not from nature's rock, as one, even the closest critic, would suppose, but that it was all manufactured from the common sand taken from our lakeshore. A knowledge of this fact stimulated us to an earnest inquiry into the reality and process of such a manufactory, and we found an immense establishment located at Cottage Grove on the lakeshore, where the Frear Stone Company are manufacturing brown stone of the most elegant designs for building purposes, at a cost which enables them to fill orders for cut stone for buildings of any size or architectural designs, at prices so far below native cut stonework as to utterly defy competition. And the Frear stone, now having been exposed to the tests of our severe winters during the past 3 years, is proved not only to endure the weather perfectly, but continually grows harder from exposure to the atmosphere in the degree of time and exposure. We are pleased to note that this is the invention of one of our own citizens, Mr. George A. Frear. And while standing by and witnessing the manufacture of an elegant keystone with large, raised figures on its face and a cornice finish, all made in 15 minutes, which would employ a stonecutter from 1 to 2 days to chisel the same, and also elegant window and door caps, costing in native stone from $40 to $125, each manufactured in the Frear stone more perfect in finish than can possibly be cut by an ordinary workman, and at a cost less than 1/4 of the cost of native stone, actually sold for from $30 to $40. We were actually forced to the conclusion that in giving the world the advantage of his ideas, Mr. Frear is entitled to the appellation of a public benefactor. The Frear Stone Manufacturing Company of this city, having for its president the Honorable John M. Wilson, is composed of some of our wealthiest and most substantial citizens. The company, we learn, has purchased the right for this state and proposed to sell county rights, reserving Cook County for their own manufacturing operations, and indeed have already sold some county rights, and manufactories are already established in different parts of the state. We also learn that the original owners of the patent have sold several state rights, and that already there are over 30 extensive manufactories in successful operation in different parts of the country. No man of sagacity can look upon this enterprise but with favor, for it offers to furnish a building material equally as substantial as stone, and much more so than brick, and at much less cost, and the sandbanks of our country, which have hitherto been considered of no value, can now by this invention be utilized and converted to valuable purposes. From the Chicago Real Estate and Building Journal. Building material, ancient and modern. Ever since Cain went out from his father's house to the land of Nod and builded a city, the subject of a cheap, substantial, and durable building material has engrossed the attention of architects, builders, and property owners. For however prolific a section of country may be in the products of the soil, and this is the real substantial wealth of any country, it cannot be peopled and wealth extracted from the soil without good, substantial, and comfortable houses for the people. Experience teaches that the balloon style of modern houses, which were erected by the earlier settlers in the West, and such are still being built in many places, instead of promoting either public or private interests, is quite the reverse, and in the end is a detriment to the interests of all. It is not always the cheapest building which costs the least possible sum to erect. A wise man builds not for himself alone, but for those who shall come after him, and become the inheritors of his, it may be, hard-earned fortune. The traveler, in passing through a section of country, judges of the character of its people, their habits of thrift, their intelligence, energy, and enterprise, entirely by the class of buildings and style of architecture of their towns and cities, and so judges correctly. And if he is seeking a location for a home for himself, or for a suitable place to make investments in business, he passes by those places where cheap wooden houses of no architectural design is displayed, and on entering a town or city whose streets, however few or short they may be, are lined on either side with substantial stone or brick buildings, He says to himself, "Here are men of energy and enterprise, and I will cast in my lot with them. Here my property, if invested in merchandise, will be comparatively safe from fire. No danger that the business and prosperity of this town will be interrupted by a conflagration, which would destroy a wooden town in an hour." What does this argue? That real estate is rendered valuable or invaluable in and about a town or city according to the style of architecture and durability of its structures. This, we think, will not be denied by any man of judgment, but the very great expense necessary to be incurred in the erection of stone buildings has nearly precluded its use in our country, except by capitalists in our large cities. And although a substantial house may be built of brick, it is not susceptible of any architectural embellishment without the great cost of cut stone trimmings, which few, comparatively at least, can afford. Again, we have in this country no first-class building stone, except granite, and the cost of working and transporting that is too great to be indulged in except by men of large means. The limestones, which are classed under the general name of marbles, used quite extensively in this city, and throughout this and other states for building purposes, are found to disintegrate rapidly on the outer surface of buildings, rendering it necessary to paint them. This, therefore, is not in as good favor as formerly. The native sandstones of Ohio and the West are loose and friable, and in using them for building purposes, great care must be taken in dressing the stone as it comes from the quarry to follow the lines of stratification, that it may lay in the building as it lay in its quarry bed, else it will rapidly disintegrate and destroy the beauty of the building, if not the structure itself. So it is with the beautiful Portland brown stone so extensively used in New York, Philadelphia, and other eastern cities, and all of these stones are seriously affected by the frosts of our severe northern winters. Yet after all, a stone house is the best that can be built, and be adorned by architectural skill to render it more beautiful than one of brick or wood, and many more would be erected were it not for their great cost. In view of all these facts, which we have adverted to, repeated efforts have been made from time to time by men of science and genius to invent and manufacture an artificial stone which should possess all the good qualities of native rock, such as strength, beauty, and durability, and at the same time be manufactured so cheaply that a person of limited means could well afford to indulge in the luxury of a substantial and beautiful stone dwelling or business house. But all such efforts proved abortive, and while we have ever taken a deep interest in the success of such efforts, we cannot avoid expressing our disapprobation of the measures adopted and the haste manifested by the owners of those patents in forcing the sale of worthless patents upon the public. But we congratulate the public upon the fact that all but one of these impositions are out of the way. The one to which we refer is the so-called Beton Cognate agglomerate, which is being so extensively advertised in this country as a French invention. It is a most remarkable fact that all that has ever been done or attempted with this in this country is to extensively and expensively advertise it, which looks to us a good deal like a desperate attempt to sell a worthless patent for a large sum of money. All we pretend to know of the Beton Cognate we gather from the published advertisements concerning it, and from the patent papers, copies of which we have before us. And first, it seems very singular that the Patent Office will grant letters patent for an article that is as old as our country. Yes, and much older, for all there is to this wonderful artificial stone is simply lime cement and sand, made into the consistency of mortar and puddled into a box and allowed to stand until it shall have become set sufficiently as to remove the boards. It is not claimed for it that it can be used as a substitute for cut stone, and it cannot be, whether so claimed or not. It is true houses can be built of it, in the manner claimed, which is by making a board box the size of the walls, and filling in between them with this concrete, or puddling it in. Then we sufficiently set, raise the boards nearly their width and fill in again, and so continue doing all the walls of the house until they are complete, and become one solid mass of concrete, precisely in the same manner as houses have been built in this city, Buffalo, and in fact all over the country at times ever since its first settlement. And it is a mystery to us how men can have the assurance to presume upon the credulity of men by attempting to sell what we conceive to be an entirely worthless article, and indeed, so far as we are able to judge from the elaborate advertisements, the Beton Coignet is of far less value than the old-fashioned concrete, from the fact that any man can in any place erect a mortar house of the concrete, while the beton has to be mixed by expensive machinery, which renders it impossible for a person of ordinary means to obtain. For be it borne in mind, the machinery must be erected and set up on the spot where the building is to be erected, for mixing and puddling purposes. After all these repeated attempts and failures, it remained for Mr. George A. Frear to unlock nature's laboratory and take from thence the hidden secret that had been so securely kept since the creation, and himself, and what he does any man can do after a few days' experience, the process being so simple and inexpensive. Manufacture from sand as its base a stone as beautiful as the most elegant wrought specimen of the justly celebrated Portland brown stone, and so closely resembling it in its geological formation that the eye of the closest critic cannot detect the manufactured from the native stone. It is now about 4 years since Mr. Frear made his discovery, and 3 years since the stone has been exposed in buildings, etc., and has proven in all respects, we believe, fully equal to all that is claimed for it by the owners of the patent, and within the past 2 years has come rapidly into use. And now the Frear stone has become an established article of trade in this city and many other parts of the country. The Frear Stone Manufacturing Company of this city is composed of some of our wealthiest, most enterprising, and substantial citizens, and they are carrying on the manufacture on an extensive scale, as is shown by the scores of first-class buildings in our city, among which are the elegant 5-story building of the Mutual Life Insurance Company on Wells Street, the immense asylum building 5 stories high, the elegant dwellings of Honorable C.N. Holden, H.B. Horton, and Colonel Farrer's beautiful house on Indiana Avenue. This stone resists the action of the atmosphere perfectly, and in every case has been found to increase in hardness from month to month, and from year to year in proportion to its exposure to atmospheric influences. It perfectly resists the action of acids and alkalis, which will entirely disintegrate any of the native stones. We have watched with great degree of interest the introduction and progress of this invention, fully realizing the immense value of the patent should it prove a success, as it has.